ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the final meeting of the Cabinet at South Ribble Borough Council for 2020, which has been quite a year, we could say. For those that don't know me, my name is Councillor Paul Foster and I'm the leader of the council and I'm the chair of this meeting. Councillor Mick Titherington is the vice chair and deputy leader of the council, and he's also here along with all members of the cabinet. The chief executive, deputy monitoring officer and democratic services team are also with us here in the civic centre tonight. Please note that this is an audio and video meeting. It is being recorded, and the stream is also being played live on YouTube. The link to the council's YouTube channel is displayed on the agenda for the meeting, and the meeting agenda can be found on the website. All members are asked to keep their microphone on mute and only unmute when they wish to speak. If you do not mute yourself, the moderator sat next to me will do this for you. However, when you wish to speak, you will need to turn on your microphone so you can be heard by all. Members and officers present in the Shield Room are also asked to ensure they keep their microphone on mute unless they are speaking. Reports will be presented by the relevant portfolio holder, after which I will bring the item into Cabinet. If any member of the Cabinet wishes to speak on the report, you should unmute your microphone and say your name for those watching online. After Cabinet has considered the reports, I'll invite comments from any members of the Council not on Cabinet. Any written representations from members of the public will also be read out at the appropriate point. If the technology does fail for any reason, we'll adjourn the meeting until we sort the problems out, but hopefully, touch wood, we'll be fine. We're aware there has been some problems in the last week or two, but we're absolutely assured by the Chief Executive that it's all been addressed and it won't happen again. Right, moving on. Apologies for absence. There are no apologies for absence. The Cabinets are all present. Agenda item 2, minutes of the last meeting. The minutes of the last meeting held on Wednesday, the 16th of November, although that is an incorrect date. The minutes on Wednesday, the 11th of November, I apologise, the agenda is wrong there, are presented. Do I have a proposer and a seconder to accept these as presented? Thanks, Mick, thank you. Any comments on the minutes from anybody on Cabinet? Any comments on the minutes from any members not on Cabinet? Okay, they're approved, thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members of the Cabinet that have not already been made? There's no further declarations of interest. Good, thank you. Moving on, the Cabinet Forward Plan. Are there any questions on any items on the Cabinet Forward Plan from any members of the Cabinet? No. Any questions from members not on Cabinet?
Chair, we've got Councillor Mrs Smith.
Councillor Mrs Smith.
Yes, good evening, Chairman. It's just a query on pages 19 and 20. There are fees and charges 2021-22 Cabinet no date, and similar on the following page, Council Housing Delivery Programme Cabinet no date. I just wondered if there was a reason for that, as everything else has got a date with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. One moment, we'll just get the officers to clarify that.
The date for the fees and charges will be the date for the budget papers, so that'll be in February. And for the housing, Margaret, I'm unclear, but there should be a date on it and we'll make sure one's added.
Okay, once those queries that Margaret raised are addressed, are there any other points from anyone on the forward plan? Okay, that's accepted. Agenda item 5, urgent decisions taken during the COVID-19 pandemic. Members of the Cabinet will all be aware that one of the things that we undertook to do is report at every meeting of the Council and every meeting of the Cabinet any urgent decisions that we've had to make. These are detailed within the report, and also, as you're all aware, any decisions that are made are published, and all members of the Council do receive a weekly update on any decisions that are made from Democratic Services. So, given that, are there any particular queries anyone has on the paper? No? Good. Any questions from any members not on Cabinet? Good. So let's just check there where Cabinet's asked to note the report. So it's noted. Thank you. Agenda item 6, the refresh of the comms strategy. A second, want to find the paper. So Andrew, Andrew Daniels, the head of comms, I believe are you on the call?
Yes, Chair. Do you want me to take you through?
Yeah, Andrew, do you mind introducing the paper to us, please? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Chair, and good evening, everyone. So this, as the leader said, is presenting the refresh of the communication strategy, which is one of the documents that we needed to update as part of the annual governance statement. And a lot of this work falls from the recent team review, as the team was shared with colleagues across Chorley Council as well. And I'll just pick out some of the key themes that I've brought out in the report, the main points for it from my perspective. So the key elements that we're looking to change and improve. The first one is around doing sort of digital better. And this is taking advantage really of all the up and coming channels that have expanded even more really over the pandemic. So it's not just your usual people who are familiar with things like Facebook, Twitter, etc. But it's the use of things like WhatsApp as a communication channel, not just as something that you might do with your friends and relatives, and also platforms like Nextdoor, which are about hyper-local social media, which we need to take a look at really and take advantage of. I just ahead of the meeting, I was just having a look at some of the stats from the digital channels, just of interest really. So over the last 3 months, we've had 2.3 million impressions across our social channels and 237,000 engagements with people. So that's when they're doing something with our content, they're liking it or sharing it. So I just thought it was worth sharing some of those stats because it is a huge part of what we'll be doing going forward, and those numbers continue to improve and increase. The second element of that is around the planning and prioritising. So at the moment, I think too much of the work we do is perhaps a little bit more ad hoc and not as planned as it could be. And this is shifting that. So a lot more of the work is tied into all the corporate strategy projects, and we've got full communications plans, and we're evaluating everything thoroughly. And as part of that, so you touched on digital just a second ago, but it's really important that we won't lose our focus on some of the traditional communication channels as well. I think within the strategy, there's some figures in there that are quoted, and I think it's roughly 13% of the population still don't use the internet. So when we're doing these communication plans, if we are targeting a specific part of our community that might not use digital, then we will address that appropriately, and we'll use some of the more traditional and offline methods. The third element of the strategy is around improving internal communication. So this is obviously with colleagues as staff, but obviously yourselves as members. It's really important that people are informed about what's going on. If people know where they fit into the organisation, the role they play, that leads to sort of higher morale and better performance. So it's important that we look at that. And the last element really is around the rebrand of the council. Obviously, we've been to previous meetings with the new logo, and obviously working on that at the moment to have that, a look as a modern professional authority, and that will be, launched in the new year properly with the launch of the new website. So the elements of the communication strategy. The other document which is included just for approval is an update of the media protocol. The changes to this are fairly minor, really, from what we've had previously, but we've changed it just to address some of the concerns I think were raised at Shared Services Joint Committee, where what would happen if there was a conflict of interest between South Ribble and Chorley Council. So if there was an issue that arose, South Ribble might have a particular view on it, Chorley might have a different view that might conflict. So how do we deal with that? And so we just set that out in the media protocol, so it's clear for everyone. I think that's fairly straightforward in that it's just business as usual, in the sense that whoever is working on those messages from each authority will take the lead from the administration, the cabinet member of the relevant organisation. So that shouldn't cause any problems going forward. And I think that's a summary of where we are with the two documents there. Happy to take any questions or any comments before go back to a decision.
Thanks, Andrew. A very thorough presentation there, which we thank you for, and also for the two reports that you've presented. Logo looks good, doesn't it? It's the first time we've seen it used in Anger, and I think it looks really, really good. I'm looking forward to seeing, as of the 1st of January, all our reports coming out under that logo, because most members will have seen it used in Anger for the first time yesterday on the demonstration of the new website. And just on that, Andrew and the team, that the website is wonderful, and the feedback we're getting already from members about the accessibility as well. The accessibility for all is really, really pleasing to see, and I'm looking forward to that being launched. I think it's mid-January, I think you said, didn't you, the team, which is great. Those stats are quite phenomenal, aren't they? Until you sit down in the cold light of day and understand that millions of hits of our website over quite a short period is why it needs to be AAA, as I think the team said yesterday. So, colleagues, we've got in front of us the two reports, the common strategy and then the updated media protocol. I have no particular questions on the media relations protocol. I think it's important that we just adhere to that and keep it updated. I know within the common strategy, there are a number of actions there for 2021. And I think, Andrew, it would be helpful if we could note as an additional recommendation that you come back to us within 6 months with an update where we are with the action plan there, particularly as some of them are in direct reference to the annual governance statement and some of the challenges that the council's faced over the last 2 or 3 years. So perhaps if you could note down to an update would be extremely helpful for us to see the progress that you've made. Colleagues, Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
Thanks, Leader, and welcome the document. And just to say how pleased I am now to see us being a bit more planned and proactive about our comms rather than reactive as we have been too often in the past. I mean, I would put this forward as a perfect example of how shared services brings extra capacity to the organisation that we haven't always had. We've always had, really good, willing comms officers before who, let's be honest, have been vastly overstretched. It's not that long ago we had one post in comms in this organisation. And I think comms is one of those things that it's easy to undervalue. It's a bit like in business. When times are hard, you don't cut your advertising when times are hard. You spend more on advertising because you've got to go out and get the business. But I think that we cut our comms budget because it was an easy cut to make, and we've suffered for it. So I think to see this strategy in place is very positive. And like yourself, for those members who continue to poo-poo a social media strategy, to hear those figures is quite striking. And it's clear that for the vast majority of the population, that's the way communications is going, and we need to go with them. Thanks, Matthew. I'm hearing rumours about 33% of those hits from you, by the way, but that's by the by. Councillor Titherington.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add, first of all, congratulations on the report, because I think it is a comprehensive report. I think that those members who attended the briefings yesterday in relation to the website, I think, well, certainly on the session that I was on, I think all members expressed their appreciation and indeed their excitement at the way we are progressing with the website. Now, as I say, just recently, I think I've noticed a considerable improvement in our response in terms of social media. If there is a post from residents, they almost immediately get a response and an explanation as to what we're doing. So I think the progress that we've already made is to be noted. And I think with this report, I mean, I'm happy to approve it because I think we're travelling in the right direction. And also, I would note and emphasise the logo. I think looks fantastic.
Thanks, Mick. Any other members on cabinet? No. Any comments from members not on cabinet? Okay. The Mayor, Councillor Jane Bell.
Thank you. Just a note that the Mayor of South, I've been doing lots of things virtually. The Mayor of South Ribble's Facebook page has had upwards of 30,000 hits and views. That's sort of a quarter of the population of South Ribble, if anybody's interested. And that wouldn't have happened without the assistance of the comms team and the IT team. So it really is and has been an absolute wonderful thing to have done. So thanks to those two teams for that help that I've had. But 30,000 hits is not half bad, is it, for a few weeks' work? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jane. I wholeheartedly agree. And some of the stuff that you're doing with the stories, I know the kids and the younger members of our community are really buying into that, so it's good to see. Councillor Damien Bretherton.
Thank you, Chair. It's just regarding the media relations protocol on page 48. There's a comment there about media training and guidance. It says the communication team can provide training to council. Is that all councillors across the council, or is it limited to specific councillors in terms of identifying opportunities for positive media coverage? And the team can advise on handling media interviews as required.
The training, I mean, is open to everyone. Always, the team's there to support all councillors. I believe in that. And whatever you want, speak to the team, and they'll support you with it. It's not just for the Labour group or the Lib Dem group. It's for every single councillor. And we would actually encourage as many members actually to do the social media training, particularly as possible, because it does prevent any inadvertent slip-ups, because if it's going to happen somewhere, it happens on social media. We can, particularly at times around elections of heightened sensitivity, should we say. So no, it's open to everyone, Damon. I think just looking at Matthew saying to me that we did do some social media training, not so long ago, but what we will do when we can in the new year, we'll run another package for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Damon. Any other members? Councillor Colin Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I've no particular issues, and I give my full support to the communication strategy. And so I echo the comments that Councillor Tomlinson has made, that we had a lack of resource in the past to be proactive. Now things are improving. I've just got a query about the media protocol, and unless I've missed it, I don't see any reference in there to the first citizen of the borough. And I think it's an important thing, because the Mayor does deal with the media, and I think the public should be aware that there is some mechanism, which doesn't mean that she's subservient to everything else. So I just wonder whether that was an oversight.
Thanks, Claire. I don't think it's an oversight. I think as you know, the Mayor would never respond politically to any approach that the council had into respect to any policy, because the Mayor's apolitical. But as the Mayor's just mentioned as well before, Colin, she's heavily involved particularly in social media at the moment, and the mayors are always they run their own, with the support of the council, they run their own Facebook sites, Twitter sites, I even think. So I don't think it's an oversight, Colin. I think it's more that it's whether it's more media relations protocol in respect to policy and politics and council business, and the Mayor doesn't attend to get involved in council business.
I didn't, Chairman, I didn't think this was a political document. And the Mayor, I think, should be identified in his or her role in dealing with the media. That's all I'm saying, because the public need to be aware of that particular role. So I don't go along with what you say, but that's my point. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Colin, and we'll agree to disagree. Councillor Margaret Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's on page 38. It's just a small point. It's importance of internals, and it reads that the external communication and the new shared services with South Ribble. Would that read better if it said external communications and the new shared service between Chorley and South Ribble would add resilience? I think it then makes the point that we're together in this, and we're not being added onto it. So it's just a point. I don't know what you think about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. I'm more than happy to accept that. So we'll ask Andrew to amend it.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Right, good. So, Andrew, if you can take the thanks of not just the administration, but the entire council back to your team, please. The COVID in many respects has been probably one of the biggest challenges, if not the biggest challenges councils ever faced. And one of the critical elements that we've had to deal with as a council is getting our message out and the comms out to the local community. And I think every single person in South Ribble recognises that the comms team have done a wonderful job in communicating with our residents, and we absolutely thank you from the bottom of our hearts from that, because without that communication we'd struggle, and I think we know we'd struggle. So take that back to your team, please. And the recommendations are to approve the new communication strategy, and we've added in there with a 6-month update to Cabinet on the action plan that's contained within that report, and secondly to approve the updated media protocol. So I'm happy to propose that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Titherington seconds that. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thanks, Andrew.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you everyone for your comments.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 7. Next steps accommodation programme, introduced by the Deputy Leader, Councillor Mick Titherington.
Thank you, Leader. I think the title of the document says it all. It's a comprehensive report. Members will recall that we did present to Council a homelessness prevention strategy, which was adopted by full Council. This report relates to the next steps, and it relates to a successful bid that we made to the MHCLG. It always sort of, gets me that, but anyway, I mean, it's a successful bid, and it lays out there the reasons behind the successful bid in terms of £30,000 for funding to continue the provision of short-term accommodation, £70,000 capital funding to provide 2 units of move-on accommodation for rough sleepers or those that are at risk of rough sleeping, and 29,520 revenue funding to provide the support for the service. I think what I'm asking Cabinet to approve this evening is the fact that the capital funding, and one of the requirements of the bid was that we match funded the capital side of it. So we're asking for £70,000 to be allocated to for the 2 units that will come out of section 106 monies. I think members may wish to note that Progress Housing will manage the properties and will own it. That's because they have investment partner status with Homes England. I think we're seeking to get that status, but we haven't got it at the moment. So that's the reason for that. But I mean, importantly, South Ribble will retain the nomination facility, on an ongoing basis. I think it's a straightforward document. I think pleased to note that we've got a successful bid, and I commend the report to Council and ask them to approve the 70,000 from 106 monies. And I'll leave it there. Any questions, I'll say.
Thanks, Mick. A thorough resume there, and the clearly very, very good positive news. Any questions from any members of the Cabinet? No. Any questions from any members not on Cabinet? Councillor Damien Bretherton.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a good idea, and I can see the idea behind handing over the ownership to a third party to manage. I'm just looking at the figures. I know the typical yield from a rental property of this type is probably around 10%. And if you imagine that the monthly rent's £400, then 2 of these units should, in theory, have a value of less than £100,000. That's probably around the Preston area. I know the figure there quoted is £140,000, which does seem quite excessive. And I'm just wondering, are we limiting the units to a specific area, or are we opening up to a broader area around Lancashire? Does it have to be in South Ribble? Can it be in Preston, for example? I'd just like some feedback on that. Thank you.
It will be for South Ribble. We have a responsibility, I believe, for us to do our best to reduce homelessness to the absolute minimum. I think the team here at South Ribble have worked hard to do that. And quite frankly, I mean, the monies have been made available by government. We've made the application. We've had the application approved. The money will be spent to make sure that we can accommodate people who are made homeless, and the idea is to move them on. In terms of the cost and the return on investment, I mean, I think the return on investment is that we don't have people sleeping on the streets. I mean, because it's an absolute national disgrace that we do have people who are sleeping on the streets. And I mean, I think I was listening to Professor Michael Marmot the other day on the radio when he said that we could resolve homelessness overnight, because we did it during the first lockdown if we only put the money into it. So take on board what you said, but as far as I'm concerned, I mean, it's a step in the right direction. It's something that we've got a duty to do, and we will spend the money wisely to make sure that people do avoid having to sleep on the streets.
Thanks, Mick. Councillor Alan Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chair. Just a bit of clarification. It says that the units must be delivered by March 2021. Does the funding disappear if that's not achieved, or is that the subject of the ongoing discussions that are mentioned in the report with the Ministry? Thanks.
I don't know if the money disappears. I mean, I understand that there is a risk that it would, but I think the idea of having the approval this evening is to get on and make sure that we deliver those units by March. And obviously, the sooner the better, if we're going to tackle the problem that we're talking about.
I think it is, Mick. As long as we've exchanged contracts by the end of March, we'll be fine on the. Councillor Colin Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I can see from the comments of the Statutory Finance Officer that the match funding is coming out of Section 106 agreements. Knowing full well that the current agreements are restricted in their contractual arrangements, is this coming out of existing Section 106 monies, or is it future expected sums?
It's existing 106 monies it's coming out of.
Thank you.
Councillor Jane Bell.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I say I'm in fully support of this? It's a fantastic system. It's already in place in Preston and other cities and towns around the place. I just think we need more money for the support side. The 29,500 might pay two part-time workers for a year, but I think it needs reviewing. I think I said this before at the informal cabinet, but I am fully in support of this. We will not cure homelessness by just finding somewhere for people to live. We need to be able to support them with whatever difficulties they've got. And it is not, this policy, whatever you want to call it, is not about money, it's about people. And I think sometimes we just need to get away from the money and look at the reasons why we are doing things. And we are doing this to protect people from having to sleep on the streets. My experience of South Ribble is that we are very lucky and that we have very few people who ever sleep on the street for more than a couple of nights, because we find out about them and we look after them. And so you have my full support, Mick. It's a cracking policy. So thanks a lot.
Well, I think me and you, Jane, are singing off the same hymn sheet as this. I mean, I know that your background is in that. I mean, and I know that you've contributed an awful lot in terms of, and are quite passionate about the situation regarding homelessness, and you've been dealing with that for most of you. Well, not for most of your professional life, but a significant part of it. So, yeah, thanks for the comments. I mean, and I entirely agree with them.
If you think about it, Mick, you know, you look back through the pandemic and we filled the hotel in Bamber Bridge, didn't we, with homeless people or with people with challenges. So, you know, we don't take our eye off the ball with this. As Jane says, it's not a huge challenge necessarily in South Ribble, but just look at the uptake during the pandemic, and I'm really pleased that the Cabinet, if you remember, we had to agree to additional funding so that they weren't kicked out in the summer. And so this is just a real, you know, it's a fantastic start, Mick, but it's something, as you say, we need to not take eye off the ball on.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not the only show in town. I mean, we are dealing with, I mean, we still have got rooms with, you know, with hotels, and we're still accommodating people. And I think, you know, it's absolutely essential when we're coming up, you know, to particularly this time of the year, that we make sure that, you know, people are accommodated and not forced to sleep rough.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mick. Right, the final question from Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I can't imagine there's a councillor in South Ribble that wouldn't support something like this, so I'm sure everybody would fully support the project itself. Just with regard to, I mean, Councillor Clark mentioned something before about the 106 money, and just going back to the portfolio recommendation number 4, is £70,000 worth of capital from 106 money. Do we need to define in that recommendation that that it is from the commuted funds from housing? Do we need to be specific in that recommendation? I think it is basically it's covered in the monitoring officer's report, but I'm just wondering whether we need to, as I say, add to that recommendation and make it clear that it is from the commuted sums for housing. Thank you, Chair.
Well, to be honest with you, I mean, we would not have been able to secure the grant, the funding, if we hadn't committed to match funding. I mean, all I can say is that, I mean, I think it's there, it's clear, and I think Cabinet know where it's coming, where the money is coming from. I mean, I'm comfortable that it's coming out from existing Section 106 money. So in that respect, I would sort of recommend that we approve this report as it is.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
right, okay, well, we can do that, yeah.
Right, thanks. Mick, can you go through the recommendations then, and we'll take this to a vote if we can, please.
Well, the recommendations are quite simple. The Cabinet approved the expenditure of the recommendations are, you know, laid out there and quite simple. The Cabinet approved the expenditure of £70,000 capital from Section 106 money, and that Cabinet approve the partnership working with Progress Housing Association to deliver this proposal.
Thanks, Mick. We'll just add money held by the council for housing purposes to the Section 106 allocation for that, and that'll clarify it. Thank you.
Okay. Well. I mean, I don't know if members heard that, but we will add that the money will come out of monies that are allocated for housing purposes. That's all right.
Right, thank you. So do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you. Councillor Matthew Tomlinson seconds that. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Right, okay, swiftly moving on. Agenda item 8, infrastructure funding statement. The Cabinet Member for Planning, Regeneration and the City Deal, Councillor Bill Evans.
Thank you, Leader. It gives me great pleasure to present this report tonight. It's a statutory requirement that we have to do it. It is only a statement. The funding statement is a requirement of the CIL Regulations 2010 as amended Regulation 121A, and we have to publish it before the end of the year. There's 2 portfolio recommendations, which I'll come back to shortly. The report itself is a summary of developer contributions, receipts, allocations, expenditure and any unspent or unallocated receipts collected from Section 106 agreements and community infrastructure levy within the financial year 2019 to 2020. Also, it's a requirement that we publish a list, an infrastructure list, detailing what infrastructure projects or types of infrastructure we intend will be or may be wholly or partly funded by CIL. You'll see that list on pages 68 to 69. It covers a number of things: public transport, there's a lot of cycle schemes on there, highway improvements, health, education, etc. It's all on the report. With that, I'll move the 2. I'll answer any questions, Chair, but I'll move the 2 portfolio recommendations as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Any questions from any members of Cabinet? The report is quite straightforward and self-explanatory and aligns with the both the local plan and the corporate plan. Any questions from anyone? Good. Any questions from any members not on Cabinet? Good. So, Bill, do you want to go through the recommendations, please?
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, there's only 2 recommendations, fairly straightforward. The first one is the approval of the infrastructure funding statement to display on the council website for the next year. And also the Cabinet asked the Director of Planning and Property to prepare a policy for spending the developer contributions. Thanks, Leader.
Do I have a seconder there? Councillor Titherington seconding. All those in favour? Perfect. Unanimous. Thank you. Cheers, Bill. Okay, moving on to agenda item 9, the renaming of Pearson House in Station Road, Bamber Bridge. There's a slight error in the agenda here because this is coming under my portfolio, not Matthew. So I'll just present this to Cabinet. It's so Pearson House, for Cabinet colleagues will be aware, is the first of the buildings being renovated and providing us with the first council houses, as we like to refer to them as, in decades for South Ribble. Pearson House is in Bamber Bridge West Ward, to be honest, to be exact, sorry. And Bamber Bridge West Ward is one of the wards that former councillor Tommy Hanson represented for a period of about 34 years. He was a Brigger through and through, although not born in Brig, and he was a wonderful councillor and a wonderful advocate for Bamber Bridge. Everyone knew him because he was just a great local councillor. Historically, as many will know, he served on the Cabinet here at South Ribble. Previously, he was heavily involved with the Grove Park being the park it is today, and we just felt it appropriate that Pearson House should be renamed Tom Hanson House in memory of the great man. It's not something that South Ribble historically has done that much over the years, naming streets or buildings, but it's most certainly something the new administration is looking to do. There could be nothing more apt than the first round of council homes for South Ribble being named after Tom. But many of us know Tom. He was a really, really nice man. As I say, a wonderful councillor, hard-working and always happy. And all my memories of Tommy are that he was always happy, he was always championing Bamber Bridge, and he was also championing this council. And even when he was not agreeing with you, he wouldn't agree, he would do it with a smile on his face. And I know he had as many friends in the opposition political groups as he did in the Labour group. So the proposal being put forward in front of us tonight is to approve renaming Pearson House to Tom Hanson House. Jonathan and the team have confirmed that they've gone through all due process with regards to the Royal Mail and other areas, statutory consultees in changing the addresses, which is approved. And so that is the proposal in front of us tonight. And it gives me great pleasure because I know some of Tom's family are also watching tonight, and it's really pleasing to see that we can bring some good news at the end of a particularly bad year. So that's the proposal. Any members of Cabinet have anything to say? Mick?
Well, I'll certainly second that. I mean, and just to sort of follow on from what you said, I mean, I think he was one of those unique councillors who was universally liked, and there have been some sort of terrible accusations that he told duff jokes, but I thought they were great, and I'm still retelling them now. But Tommy was an inspiration because he would pass on his knowledge and encourage new councillors. He would use his experience to assist anybody. He was a good ward councillor. He was a good borough councillor. He was on the cabinet. He was an all-round participant in everything that was good in relation to South Ribble and to Bamber Bridge. So it's a fitting tribute to an excellent councillor and a valued human being. So delighted to second the recommendation.
Thanks, Mick. Matthew?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I was first elected to this council way back in 1999, and Tom Hanson was a veteran then. He was deputy leader at the time. I think it says a lot about the man's character. He was deputy leader to 3 different leaders. And we all know that when leaderships change in political groups, there tends to be some upheaval. But the Labour group picked Tom to be the deputy 3 separate times because they knew they could rely on his honesty and his loyalty. And I think that's a really important thing to remember about him. I can confirm that Councillor Titherington is still recycling Tom Hanson's jokes, and they remain as awful as they ever were when Tom used to tell them. I think you could go on a long time about Tom, and it's probably best to keep it as brief as you can. Massive contributor to the life of Bamber Bridge, massive contribution to the workings of this council, a huge champion for this council as well as for his adopted village, and to have a building right in the heart of Bamber Bridge named after him. I'm sure his family are really proud, and I'm pleased that we could be part of it.
Thanks, Matt. Any members not on Cabinet have any comments to make? Councillor Mrs Smith.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I think it is a fitting tribute to Tom. I knew Tom very well, and over many, many years, and yes, his jokes were pretty bad, and they did get recycled very many times. And when you've been on the council as long as I have, yes, you got to the point of having heard them an awful lot. But Tom, as has been said, was a very loyal and honest man. But the one thing that I always remember Tom for was his courtesy. is courtesy to everyone, not just to his own group, but to our group as well. And he was well respected in the Conservative group, and I'm sure his family are extremely pleased with the forthcoming naming of that house for him. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Margaret. Those words are appreciated by everyone, especially his family. Anyone else? Councillor Colin Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Knowing Tom for the last 30 years, I would echo all the comments made by everyone that's spoken so far, and I would certainly give my support to the recommendation. However, I have a comment to make because I tried to get a development in Longton named after a community, a person in the community who had given a lot of his time and effort to Longton, but I was reminded that I couldn't do that because South Ribble had a policy that they couldn't give the names of prominent people to any developments in Longton. So I think that needs checking out because, and Jonathan Node must know this, because it was an officer within his department that actually gave me that information and said it couldn't be done. So it's just, I mean, obviously I wouldn't wish to not to support this recommendation for Tom, but it's just to bear that in mind, that we may have a policy which does limit this situation.
Thanks, Colin. I think it wasn't so much as a policy, Colin. I just think it was the view of the previous administration that it's not something that they generally supported, was the naming of streets and the naming of developments after individuals. Because I know I'm looking at Councillor Bill Evans. I know when we were in opposition, there was a couple of proposals at times to name streets, which were pushed back. But we're more than comfortable with this anyway because there is no policy.
Can I just come back and say that needs to be just checked out and changed if it's not appropriate, please, because there are ramifications in my ward as far as that's concerned. I got a piece of paper actually from a member of Jonathan Node's staff.
You just send it to the Chief Executive, he'll check it out, Colin. Councillor John Hesketh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think it's just the Conservative Party that have been against naming of roads and properties, because way back in Howard Gore's day, it wasn't really supported in those days. So that's going back probably 15 or 20 years. But I have a feeling that Councillor Clark is right in what he says, that it is a policy, it was a policy of South Ribble not to name roads or properties. But having said that, Mr. Chairman, I'd known Tom for years and years. We've both been on the council, similar length of time, and he was well respected and so forth. He was a good mate of mine, even though he belonged to a different party. And I think on this occasion, Mr. Chairman, I would support having his name put on this property. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Anyone else? Councillor Christine Melia.
Yes, as a councillor for Bamber Bridge East, I welcome this, and I think it's a really good idea to name after Tom. And I'm sure all the people in the Brig will be happy about it, and obviously all the councillors are. So yeah, that's a great idea, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. I don't think there's any more lights flashing. So just to finalise this, what I would say to all members, if there has historically, years gone by, be a policy or a view or a reluctance to name buildings or streets after individuals, that certainly doesn't exist now, and we're open to any proposals from any individuals around the borough, because it's the most fitting way to remember members of our community. And as I say, Tom and his family and all of us are more than happy to support this recommendation. It's actually Tom's fault that I'm sat here tonight, just so you're all aware. While you're saying nice things about him, because he came around and interviewed me to be a Labour candidate back in 2006. And put it this way, he grilled me one Saturday morning, I promise you, with Dave Watts. Right, so the recommendation in front of us is that it says subject to the clearance from street naming and numbering, but that's already in place, Jonathan, isn't it? That the Pearson House be renamed Tom Hanson House. I'm privileged to propose that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Mick Titherington, all those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. So then the final agenda item 10, the Worden Hall project. Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
Yes, thanks, Leader. This is a supplementary agenda. So for those of you using your tablets, you'll have to open a different window. Can I just say before I go on that there is a paragraph that needs removing, and that's recommendation 7, which speaks about bringing a further report to award the contract back to Cabinet, because under the scheme of delegation in paragraph 6, I'm asking Cabinet to delegate that responsibility to me and the Chief Exec. So there won't be a need to bring it back to Cabinet. There'll be a report, naturally, because we want not only Cabinet but the whole Council to be aware of the progress of this exciting project, but it won't need to come back for permission. It's a progress report. I'm really pleased to say that we've now submitted a planning application to South Ribble Borough Council, but the application is in, and we're aiming for the application to be heard at the Planning Committee in early February. And like most other members, I'm sure, I'm keen to get on with this as quickly as we can, and so we do want to move ahead with the procurement exercise to identify a contractor in tandem with gaining planning permission rather than waiting to get planning permission. We have had some discussions with certain people about the possibility of doing that, but we're not yet quite at a stage where we can award a contract. It is likely that we'll be at a stage to award a contract before the next Cabinet meeting, and having already explained how keen I am that we make progress on this, I want Cabinet to give me that delegated authority alongside the Chief Exec to crack on with this. So it is, an exciting time. It's another step forward. I'm sure that members of the Scrutiny Committee, who at every Scrutiny Committee want to know where we're up to with Worden Hall, will be pleased to see this progress. And with that, I will simply move the recommendations, which are, and I've opened the wrong window on my tablet. Bear with me, everybody, bear with me. So the recommendations, that Cabinet welcomes the progress of the Worden Hall project and note the formal submission of the project to planning this week. That Cabinet authorise the portfolio holder for finance, property and assets in consultation with the Chief Executive to commence a procurement exercise to identify a contractor and professional services to implement the project. That subject to the receipt of planning and listed building, Cabinet authorises the portfolio holder in consultation with the Chief Exec to appoint the highest scoring contractor and professional services in terms of social value, quality of submission, time frame for implementation and price to be appointed to undertake the works. And then we skip a paragraph and that a further report be brought back to Cabinet outlining proposals as to how the refurbished Worden Hall be run in the future to the benefit of all, including local communities and visitors alike. Can I deal with the question? We'll do that last. Okay, yeah. Okay, so people may be aware there's a question from a member of the public. We'll deal with that after we've had questions and comments from members. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Yeah, we'll just keep to the protocol, the questions at the end, yeah. But the great report, Matthew, detailed report, the scheme, looks really exciting. Great to see that subject to planning permission, listed building consent, that you'll have a spade in the ground by Easter. which I think is wonderful considering the huge challenges that the teams had through the pandemic. And great to see that we're going to make sure we have it finished for the Leyland Festival next year as well. It's good stuff. Any questions from any of the members on Cabinet to Matthew? Good. Any questions from members not on Cabinet?
Councillor Ogilvie.
Alan, even I saw how quick you moved to your computer then, Alan. As soon as I mentioned that, Alan Ogilvie, Councillor Alan Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I welcome this report, and I echo Councillor Tomlinson's wish that we crack on and get on with this now. Just a few points of clarification, if you could. The first point, it's associated with the question from the member of the public, but it's not the same. It's not cutting across it. Once you've done the totalising of the 4 criteria mentioned for assessing the bids, there's always going to be a balance between cost and timescale. Now, there's a reasonable chance that the top score at the end of the day, once it's totalled, you could either have something that is over the budget but on time, or you could have something that's under budget but delivered late. So how are you going to assess that final decision, if you like, or is it purely going to be on the top score? Second point I'd just like to make, the current consultants, according to the report, are being asked to finalise the scope to ensure that the delivery is within the 2.17 million budget. It's a very bold statement, that, to say that they're going to ensure it, because nobody's going to know what the cost is until you get the bids back in. And the final point I'd just like to make is in relation to risk. There's a paragraph or a sentence mentioned about risk, which basically describes that there is a risk, but there's nothing in the report that mentions how we may attempt to mitigate said risks. Now, there will be a cost associated with mitigating risks, that there always is. And what I'd just like to ask is, can you confirm that a costed risk register will be delivered as part of the overall budget for this project? Thank you.
Well, your first point I can answer fairly straightforwardly, I think. The second one, I might be looking for some professional advice. I've always been clear that Council at a budget meeting agreed the budget for this project is 2.170 million. And that is the budget. That is the budget, Councillor Ogilvie. So whilst I'm keen to crack on, if you'll excuse my use of the vernacular, if someone comes back and says we can do this quick for 2.5 million, and somebody says, well, do you know what, if you've only got 2.170, it's going to take 3 months later, then I will choose the one that's later, because Council have agreed the budget, and I've committed to do my absolute utmost to deliver this project within that budget, and that's what I intend to do. With the risk register, it looks like the Chief Exec is chomping at the bit.
No, thanks, Matthew. So I think the next question was how can we say it's going to come in at 2.172 million? Because it will, Alan. Because if there needs to be a value engineering exercise undertaken by the professional consultant team to bring the price where it needs to be, then that's what will be undertaken. And we've already had some detailed cost analysis done. Matthew has worked with the team to get that done, and we're confident we will bring it in within budget. And in respect to risk, I'm going to hand over to Gary.
Yep, thank you. I thought you'd answer that one. You're the expert, aren't you? But anyway, just back to Alan's point in terms of some of the risk. Part of the risk is mitigated by the kind of pre-tender work you do. So all the surveys, etc., that you go through, so you can get to that final price. And in essence, that's what we're doing. We're doing all the kind of preparatory work up front, so we're very clear about what we think the risk is, and to mitigate that kind of risk level that you say contractors will price in. That's how we'll mitigate the risk.
Thanks, Gary. And I know it's been one of our frustrations as a cabinet at the fact that we're having to go through and provide a little bit more detail because of the listed building status, but that in itself de-risks the scheme, because we're having to do all those additional surveys, and actually the additional design work associated with delivering the scheme for the listed status. Any more questions, Claire? No. Alan, do you want to come back?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just to thank Councillor Tomlinson for the clarity of the answer to my first point, which was about the difference between budget or timely completion. And other than that, say thanks for the various explanations, and I wish you well, and let's hope it proceeds very smoothly. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Anyone else? That's all the questions then. So let me read out, Matthew, the question from our member of the public that we haven't seen for a few months, Mr. Bernard Derbyshire from Penwortham. Good evening, Bernard, if you're watching. Question 1. Paragraph 6 of the Worden project states that you and the Chief Executive will decide which contractor will be authorised to undertake the Worden Hall project works, subject to Cabinet approval. The contract will be awarded to the highest scoring contractor in terms of social value, quality of submission, timeframe for implementation and price. I can understand how you can quantify awarding a contract using points 2, 3 and 4, but point 1, social values, are a personal, family, group, geographical and more divisive, a political decision. So, Councillor, do you agree with me that the social value criteria should be removed from the bidding process? If not, why not? And I'll just remind everybody watching this stream, I am reading a question out from a member of the public. Matthew.
Thank you. Well, there's two potential answers to this, and I'm not sure that Mr. Derbyshire, good evening, Mr. Derbyshire, by the way, we've missed you. I'm not sure he'll like either of them. I have to say, I'm a bit disappointed with Mr. Derbyshire, because I always presumed that he would be watching all of our cabinet meetings and scrutiny meetings that are now streamed live. I thought he'd be watching them avidly. And clearly he hasn't been, because he doesn't understand, a bit like some of our Conservative councillors struggled with for a while, he doesn't understand what social value is. And it's none of the things that he stated it was in the question. Anybody who watched the scrutiny meeting where Councillor Bilinski-Gelder presented, or where she spoke at Cabinet, will now understand just what social value is and what potentially it brings. And I thought she'll forgive me for reading out something that she sent to me this week. The Social Value Act of 2012 lays out an obligation for local authorities to look holistically at procurement. As a council, we're already behind many other councils on this. And indeed, other councils are winning awards for the way they use social value to inform their procurement, while South Ribble, sadly, is falling behind. The Werden Hall project provides an excellent opportunity, and especially in the current climate, an excellent opportunity to upskill, employ and improve the financial outcomes for some of the residents of South Ribble. Common sense isn't a phrase that I personally use very often, but according to Councillor Bilinski-Gelder, it's common sense to use this in a project like Werden Hall. And for someone to think otherwise merely shows their naivety on how goods and services should be procured in the modern world. And so the answer to the question is no.
Thanks, Matthew. Question 2. If you proceed with the proposed bidding process, what will the percentage weightings be allocated to each of the four proposals?
Okay, full disclosure and honesty, I'm not yet at a stage to give those figures, but I'm sure Mr. Derbyshire is more interested in what weighting will be given to social value. And as I've said, not quite in a position to give those exact figures, but I can say that, for instance, on Tom Hanson House, as we can now call it, the social value accounted for 6% of the tendering process, whereas at Hurst Grange Coach House in Penwitham, a tender that went out recently, that was at 20%. And I would expect this to be somewhere in the lower range of those quotes. But I'm not quite in a position to give a full answer to that question.
And I think it's fair, thanks Matthew, it's fair to say that obviously clearly that'll be disclosed when you bring the report back to Cabinet, and it's policy now anyway, the social value. Thanks for those answers. So, right, Matt, you just, you've gone through the recommendations, that's fine. Just remind us we're removing recommendation 7 because it doesn't need to be there. Matt's proposed it, I'm happy to second it. All members agree? That's unanimous. So that brings us to the end of the meeting tonight. May I thank all members of the Cabinet and officers for attending tonight. May I thank all members of the Council who have dialed in and contributed. May I genuinely wish you all a Merry Christmas as best as it can be. It's going to be different this year for all of us. I think we all accept that. And let's all look forward together to 2021. I know there's a meeting of the Planning Committee tomorrow night, and there's a meeting of the Governance Committee on Tuesday. And I do apologise to members. Tuesday, the 22nd of December, is very late in the year, but it has been one of those years, hasn't it? So, I genuinely wish you all a Merry Christmas and enjoy it as best as you can. And I look forward to seeing you all again in January. Thank you very much.